Good day, students. I am teacher Jonathan Javier Hermosilla of Compostela National High School, Compostela East District, for the subject, Introduction to the Philosophy of Human Person. Let us discover wisdom in the world of philosophy. In this lesson, you will be able to, number 1, realize that all actions have consequences. Number 2, evaluate and exercise prudence in choices. Number 3, realize that choices have consequences. Realize that some things are given up while others are obtained in making choices. Number 4, show situations that demonstrate freedom of choice and the consequences of their choices. I would like you to prepare your pen, answer sheet, and your module in Humanities 12, Quarter 2, Module 5. Let us answer the activity, What I Know. Instructions. Write true if the statement is correct, and false if it is wrong. Write your answers on your answer sheet. Number 1. Freedom refers to the ability to make choices and perform actions. It is an intrinsic and essential property of the human person. Is your answer true? You got it right. Number 2. Physical freedom is a type of freedom from physical restraint. Did you answer true? Brilliant. Number 3, responsibility means that a person is being accountable for his or her actions and their consequences. If your answer is true, you are correct. Number 4, it is a responsible use of freedom if a person still posted a photo of his or her classmate on social media, even if he or she knows that his or her classmate would be humiliated by it. Did you answer false? You're right, because that is an irresponsible act. Number 5, it shows prudence if you choose not to study for your exam the next day because you choose to attend the debut party of your best friend today. If your answer is false, you got it right, because you can go to the party but go home early to study. This time, let us talk about the freedom of the human person. But first, look at this picture. In relation to freedom, what do you think does a bird inside a cage mean? What do you think is the difference if the bird is inside the cage and if it is outside the cage? What is freedom? Freedom is the ability to make choices and perform those choices. It is the ability to be what we want and to decide and create oneself. There are two concepts that will help us fully understand freedom. Number one is freedom itself. According to Merriam Dictionary, it is the quality or state of being free. It is our capacity to choose. It is an intrinsic and an essential property of a human person. It is part of our human nature. Number two, free will. Our free will allows us to decide on things. It is our ability to choose. It is our ability to choose things according to our moral reasoning. To sum it all, our freedom then could be traced down in a person's exercise of his rationality or intellect and free will. Individual actions defines who and what kind of person one is. Doing what is good and acting on it is what makes you a good person, while doing the negative will also give a negative impression. A person's action determines what kind of person he or she becomes. Kinds of freedom. Number one, physical freedom. It refers to the absence of any physical restraint. Granted that the person has natural limitations, physical freedom allows him or her to act and move in determined manner. Number two, psychological freedom. This is also called freedom of choice. It is innate and cannot be denied to a person. No outside force or influence can compel a person to take action against his or her will. Number three, moral freedom. This refers to using freedom in a manner that upholds human dignity and goodness. Humans have a natural inclination for what is true and good. And when a person uses his or her freedom to do acts that violates human dignity and goodness, he or she dehumanizes himself or herself and effectively negates human freedom. Two elements that define freedom. Number one, voluntariness. It is the ability of a person to act of his or her own free will and self-determination. Voluntary acts are free acts which can be assigned a corresponding moral value. One must always remember that in every action we make, there is an equivalent consequence. Moreover, one must always accept the consequences that result from his or her decisions or actions and take responsibility for them. Second, responsibility. This refers to the person being accountable for his or her action and their consequences. Taking responsibility can mean either you take responsibility to your action voluntarily or other people will hold you responsible. Important factors to consider in the exercise of freedom. Number 1, prudence. It is the ability to govern and discipline oneself with the use of reason. It is having caution and giving good judgments in making decisions. Number 2, self-reflection. It allows us to be more rational in making choices because sometimes human beings tend to be slaves by their emotions and moods whenever they act certain things. Freedom should be exercised with control and reasonable limits. As humans, we enjoy freedom, but we need to understand that it is not absolute. Meaning, we should exercise our freedom with control and reasonable limits. For example, a student may be first in line in a grocery store, but chooses to give way to an elderly woman next to her. Giving limits to our personal freedom simply means sacrificing certain self-interest and accept that there are things beyond our control. Freedom should be exercised with regard to knowledge and truth. As rational beings, it is natural for us to think before we act. We should be equipped with the ability to acquire information and truthful knowledge because it will aid us in making wise and informed choices. For example, to correctly answer a multiple choice item in an examination, a student has to study his or her lessons. Otherwise, he or she cannot have a 100% sure answer. Freedom should be exercised to uphold the freedom of others. Freedom is a recognized and guaranteed right for all persons, meaning freedom should be enjoyed by all. But it is important to remember that freedom should be exercised not as a tool to restrict the freedom of others, but as a means to enable others to fully enjoy their own freedom. For example, you shared your hard-earned money to cater the needs of your friend who is in dire need of it for the realization of his or her school project. What we have learned? Freedom is an intrinsic and essential property of a human person. Human person by nature seeks freedom, and our freedom makes us distinct from other beings. Freedom gives us the power or ability to be what we want and to decide and create ourselves. There are three kinds of freedom: physical freedom, psychological freedom, and moral freedom. The two important elements of human freedom are voluntariness and responsibility. As a person possessing self-determination, individual actions, as it is freely chosen by an individual, then defines who and what kind of individual we are. Having freedom and exercising it bears responsibilities. All our actions have consequences that come with it. Therefore, it is important to act with prudence and reflect on possible courses of actions before making a decision. Freedom should be exercised in a responsible and beneficial manner. One must control and recognize limits of his or her freedom, for it is our responsibility as persons to uphold not only our individual freedoms, but also the freedom of others. Please get your pen and answer sheet. Let us have an assessment of what you know. Instructions. Write true if the statement is correct, and false if it is wrong. Write your answers on a separate piece of paper. Number 1. Freedom refers to the ability to make choices and perform actions. It is an intrinsic and essential property of the human person. Is your answer true? You got it right. Number 2. Physical freedom is a type of freedom from physical restraint. Did you answer true? Brilliant! Number 3. Responsibility means that a person is being accountable for his or her actions and their consequences. If your answer is true, you are correct. Number 4. It is a responsible use of freedom if a person still posted a photo of his or her classmate on social media, even if he or she knows that his or her classmate would be humiliated by it. Did you answer false? You're right, because that is an irresponsible act. Number 5. It shows prudence if you choose not to study for your exam the next day because you choose to attend the debut party of your best friend today. If your answer is false, you got it right, because you can go to the party but go home early to study. Congratulations! You got a perfect score! An indicator of the responsible use of your freedom in listening to the discussion. To learn more, please answer the other activities in your module. Once again, I am teacher Jonathan Javier Hermosilla of Compostela National High School, Compostela East District, saying, dito sa TV Eskwela, sa pag-aaral, sama-sama. Bye-bye!